everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 5 of March Comes In Like a Lion. And last episode we got baseball, we got Hina crushing over the ace, we got like some mysterious insight into possibly some of Rei's past, and then we got basically Nikaido being an amazing friend and Akari gushing over him and trying to be a maternal caring figure for him, a caregiver, if you will. And it was just really adorable. Like, I really love how this series balances like its intense artistic style and moments of tension and intrigue where you're like, oh, I feel like this moment is tense and has value, but we don't know why yet. And then it balances that with this really humorous, like situational humor and dialogue with the characters. It just works very well. I like it a lot. So yes, my dogs are being ridiculous tonight, so you'll have to excuse them. They're very distracting, but I wanted to watch this episode. I was like, I couldn't wait. I was like, after last week, I was like, I want to go ahead. I need to watch ahead because I'm going to be out of town. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and watch it. It's going to be great. So I do want to talk before we start. Death to Boredom. They sent me the two, the end card animation little end cards for episodes 3 and episode 4. Episode 3, I'm not going to lie. It's by Junichi Noju. I know this art style. I've seen works by them before. I don't think I've ever read or watched anything by Junichi Noju, but I've seen this art style before, but I'm going to be honest, this one kind of creeps me out. A little bit. It's a little creepy, and I think it's just because of how intense that Rei looks. Like, the way that Rei is drawn here is very hyper-realistic. It's a little creepy. Like, I'm like, oh no, where's his big green eyes? And he has the cartoonish, features that are exaggerated. Here it's a little real, and I'm like, oh, Also, it's like just the proportions, like the way that the face is a little bit more rounder, but yet oval and egg-like, and I don't know, it feels very intense. But I mean, I like it. It just is a little creepy. It's almost also reads like the way that he's staring at you in this moment. It's like one of those paintings where the eyes follow you. My great aunt had a copy of American Gothic, the painting American Gothic, hanging in her house. And I couldn't go in that room as a kid because the eyes of that painting follow you. Creeped me the hell out. That's kind of what this does too, but you know what? It's fine. And then the other one, though, is exactly the opposite, where it's by Heikiru Hikawa, and it's like we have Momo on top of the horse fighting after a lion, which March comes in like a lion, It's very cute. She looks like a little magical girl on top of a horse battling the lion, like saying, go, go. That's super adorable. I like that a lot. So I like how each of the end cards is a very different style, and it kind of reflects the episode a little bit. I like that a lot. So it makes me, the fact that they're all done by different mangaka, make me really excited to see the end cards as we go through them. Because I'm like, I don't know if there's 44 mangaka that individually do the end cards, or if like Miura's going to come back, or if they're going to like rotate them in or out. I don't know. So I'm excited for that. That should be a lot of fun. I'm intrigued to see where that goes, but very interesting, right? Very interesting. So thank you, Death to Boredom, for showing me those. I am still looking at everybody's comments. I am going to keep doing that. I'm going to be gone on this trip, so I have a feeling like for episode 7, there's going to be a lot of comments to look at because I'm going to record this one. I'm probably going to record episode 6 before I leave. So by the time I get back for episode 7, I will probably have a lot of comments to go through. So we'll just have to see for that one. But real quick, I want to give a shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon to thank them for their support. I'm always thankful for people on Patreon and YouTube that support my channel, but I want to give a special shout out to those in the philanthropy tier who donate a little bit more each month, and I'm super, super grateful for their support. So special thanks to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Destiny Marie, to, I have to say their name like this every single time because Danger Zone! To Eric, to Kiri, to Lyndon, to Matthew Palfiniere, to Nameless Monster, to Nicholas, to Murphew, to Mateo L. Fidel, as well as to Shimoyama, to Sunspots, to Translucent Men, to Trails, to El Freya, as well as Boo Boo. So, thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So yeah, I'm super excited. I don't know at this point. We've gotten a lot about Hina. We've gotten a lot about Akari. Momo is the baby sister, so I don't know if we're gonna really tackle much with her character because she's like a little bitty kid. Like, what can we get in tune with her? We've had a little preview of Ray's past last episode, that he might have been assaulted, and I'm like, excuse me. So I need more context for that at some point. And then Nikaido is just the best friend. I freaking love Nikaido. Everybody needs a Nikaido in their life. I love Nikaido's character. So yeah, I'm super excited. I hope you all are too, but we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive into March Comes In Like a Lion, episode 5, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. So that may be like one of the best episodes of anything I've watched recently. I was floored. I was stunned in awe, just gobsmacked. I haven't had an episode of something like hit me like a truck, because we know that Ray has had like a backstory. We're like, oh, what's Ray's past? And then they're like, oh, you want to know? You really want to know the most tragic backstory? Like, I think Ray's backstory is like one of the most tragic because it's so real. And because it's just, it's kind of, it takes that cliche of the character who's the dad figure that likes the one kid that's not his son. You know, there's lots of stories where it's like a father of children takes in like another kid and treats them more like their son than their actual children. Like, that's a trope that exists and it's done a lot, but the way that this is done is so natural and organic, and I feel so much for Ray, who's like a victim in all this, and he's the victim and he believes that he's the perpetrator of all this, and there's just a lot to break down. I was like, oh my gosh, there was so much. It was just like, it was like wave after wave after wave. Oh, this show does it so expertly too. I could see why Miura loves this author. I could see why their storytelling resonates so well, because it's so subtle that I could see if somebody just watched this on the surface and wasn't paying attention, they're like, oh, that's kind of boring. No, this is such great storytelling, and the character work is so subtle, but it's so real and relatable, and oh my God. Oh, and my dog, who has tolerated me this entire time, is now like, bitch, play with me, and I'm like, I'm getting there. So I had to bring Whiteboard Kun out. I was like, it just has to happen, right? Has to happen at this point. So, oh my gosh. But yeah, so let's talk about this episode and the lie, the cuckoo, that Ray believes he's a liar. So our boy Ray, we know, is the son of a shogi player. And he was a shogi player that is now, his father had given up shogi to take over a hospital, presumably to help raise his children, his son and his daughter, right? That's his father. So the shogi player had given up shogi to take over a hospital. And there's an aspect of that that's like, you know, what is the lie? Did the dad really want to give up shogi, but he took over the hospital because it was a way of making money to be self-sufficient so that he could give his children a better life? Probably. But he obviously still cares about shogi because he's inviting his childhood rival over to play with him and his kid, right? And his kid has a natural knack for shogi like he did. So then we have the father's rival. Put him up here. The father's rival, which is, we'll get his name in a little bit, which is he is a pro shogi player. He's a pro shogi player, and he's kind of like an inside celebrity, right? So, but little baby Ray's animation, I could watch it for days. I could look at little baby Ray forever. Like, he's the cutest thing in the world when he's like his little kid form. But the idea, I love that the rival, he was like, you don't think like a kid. You think like an adult. Like, why'd you make that move? Like, you made that move. And you'd think, you know, the dragon was there. A kid would have gone after the dragon because that would have been an obvious move. And then Ray's like, well, you would have checkmated me if I'd done that. And I love the teapot just sitting there like boiling, like just bubbling to the surface. Everything's like bubbling, boiling over. Oh, it's incredible. this opening scene where they talk about, and the way everything about, I can't emphasize in words that the animation in this series, but particularly the animation in this episode, the way that the storm surrounding Kyoko is portrayed, the way that her attitude, her demeanor is depicted through wind and through animation, the way that the camera rotates, the use of isolation during the funeral scene, everything, every artistic choice in the animation of this episode is sublime and perfect. And I don't know what else to say about it other than it's perfect. You could dissect every single second of this episode, and it's done so well. I have nothing bad to say about this episode. It's incredible. I was just floored. Because, you come off this episode, like the last couple episodes have been, there's been some like touching moments that made me cry, but they're funny too. And then this backstory just hits you like a Mack truck, and you're like, oh, this is Ray's story. And we're only 5 episodes in. Only 5. We're setting up the internal conflict, right? But here's the truth. The truth of the matter is that Ray is a natural at shogi. He is a natural. He is natural at it. He is talented. That is his forte. I'm going to move this over here so y'all can see it better. But he's a natural at it, but he only played to keep his father close. He didn't really like it. It's one of those things, he's like, I don't really like shogi, but my dad likes it. And so if I play, it'll make my dad be around more because his friend's here. And it's a way for me to be close to my dad. And so he really didn't play it because he liked it. He did it because he's naturally good at it, and he was doing it to impress his dad. And the thing about it is his dad doesn't seem to know that he doesn't really like it. So he just kind of is like, oh, look at my son. My son's doing so good. But he doesn't realize that it's a lie, right? And then he's like, I'd be happy and restless because, and like his father looks like him. Ray's dad looks just like him. Oh, he's like, apparently a while ago, he and my father were members in the Federation. They were rivals. Yep. Oh my God. But yeah, and the dad, it's kind of like the dad is tempted by Ray because the dad realizes the talent that Ray has and finds him as a worthy opponent, like somebody that later on he'd be able to play as they got older, right? Shogi wasn't my favorite, but it was precious time I could spend with my busy father. And the father's like, well, I wish he'd play a little bit more outside, but I guess he's more like me. He's like, I wish he'd find something else to do that suited him. What I like about it is that the dad, that the original biological father wasn't trying to push Ray to be a shogi player like the dad was his own, like the rival was his own kids. Like Ryoka and Ayumu, they were being forced kind of and encouraged to play shogi by their dad because he enjoyed it. He was like kind of like the typical stereotypical sports dad that you think of that wants their kids to play the same sport they did and live in the shadow through their children. That's kind of the vibe I get from the one dad. But Ray's biological dad was like, I wish he'd go outside and find something else to do, but he seems to enjoy this, so I'm not going to say no. I'm glad he doesn't force him, right? And but he doesn't realize that Ray's doing it to be with him, right? He doesn't realize that. And then this part here where Ray talks about being bullied at school, where he's like, I was bullied a lot and they were making conversation that I didn't understand. He's like, they talked in ways that I didn't understand. But here, I like that shogi that requires this calm focus is this kind of like adult language he knows. And we talked a few episodes ago about, whether Ray is neurodivergent or not. I don't know. You can make assumptions if you want to, or if it's just that's how he is socially, that he socially is introverted and withdrawn. And I don't, from this episode, I don't necessarily know. I can't tell you if he is on a spectrum or anything. I can't. But what I can tell you is from his introversion, it's so relatable. He's like, everybody around me speaks in a language sometimes I don't understand, but this is the language I know. And I love the idea that something so calm and focusing as shogi, because every time we've seen shogi being played, it's like on the outside, it's kind of like golf. I watch a golf match and I'm like, that seems like the most boring thing in the world. They're just hitting a ball, walking to the hole, and they pick it up, whatever. But I'm sure if you are a golf player, you're like, no, you get in your mind, you get in your head, you're in the zone. It's a calm focus. It's a very centralized sport where you and someone are like going back and forth with each other to win this match. And that's kind of what shogi is in a way, where it's not like a contact sport like soccer or basketball or football where it's all of this physicality. It's of the mind, and you're isolated, but you're focused, and there's like, it's very goal driven. So I love the way that Ray describes this here, and that he couldn't really make friends. They had these bewildering conversations I couldn't keep up with. It was going too fast. But here with shogi, on the other side, the words he said on the other side of the shogi board, I could get those. They were spoken with clarity and calmness, and I understood it. And oh my God, so good. Even though he was adult, he was the only one that he really spoke to me. Yeah, I like also the idea of Ray, that through shogi, it was a way that people saw him. Because, yeah, people, like, recognize him in the shogi world. Like, Nikaido is like, you're my rival, all this. But, yeah, he's like, people see him, and they treat him like a person to be related to. Whereas, you know, in regular school life, he's like, I don't, you know, get along with anybody like that. He was the only person outside of my family who did that, who understood him. And I like that we see like all these kids that are in middle school, these kids going around and playing in different capacities. And then we get back to him and he's kind of by himself. And that's kind of the point. He just doesn't relate to this. Like, he's by himself studying shogi while everybody else is out in groups communicating in different ways. But he's trying to keep... The thing that's so interesting, though, is that he keeps playing. He keeps playing. Because at this point, I'm almost like he's living by himself. So, you know, when he was a little kid, it made sense why the way that whole thing was worded. We'll get to it. And it's just like, mwah, chef's kiss 1,000 times over. But that was when he was a kid. And the options were orphanage or being raised by your dad's rival to be a shogi player. It's like, that's your Faustian deal. But here, he keeps playing. And at first, the goal was to become independent so that he would stop drowning. So he would stop drowning and being the cuckoo. Right? That was the whole goal, was that he could make enough money where he could live somewhere else. But I'm like, now that he lives somewhere else and he's independent, then that's a sign that if he loses his money, he doesn't, I guess, necessarily have to go back. But he does, because it's created this cycle where he needs the money so that he can be independent and not burden the family. But to be independent, he needs money. And you guys can't see that. He needs money. And then in order to get the money, he has to play shogi. And he plays shogi to get the money to be independent. So it creates this cycle, right? The cycle of the lie. And Ray's like, I can't escape it. He's like, I have to have money to be independent. To be independent, I have to have money. To get money, I have to play shogi. And I have to play shogi to get money. And it just starts this whole thing over again. And he can't get out of that cycle, because the moment he stops playing shogi, he won't have the money. Where's he going to live? He doesn't have any family that will take him in. So it's either be homeless or go back to that house and continue to eat up that family entirely. Oh, I'm just like floored by it. Floored by it. So I like that we get two aunts in this episode. We get the one aunt who is the proprietress to the club that Akari works at, and she trips and falls, and Akari has to take her to the ER. Like, she's sitting there smoking, like, God damn it, my leg. That was really funny. So, but I like the idea that you have this aunt who seems to be supportive and supported by her family with Akari, and then the other aunt, who is his dad's sister, who we'll talk about, that I'm like, oh, she's a wretch. So we'll get to her. But yeah, he's like, can you go pick up Momo from school? And you know what? It didn't even hit me about the sister. I remember the sister being in the flashbacks, and I was like, did he have a sister? And it didn't hit me until I was like, the way that he's able to interact with Momo, the patience he has with her, the care, like him picking her up, knowing how to use a first aid kit, like all of that, and him being a brother, suddenly makes sense. And I'm like, oh. Also, little Spy Family reference. I feel like the little daycare that Momo's in reminds me of the one that Anya's in that series. Or not Anya, but in Buddy Daddies, not Spy Family, of Miri being in there. But I like, again, Ray's like, is she having fun? And he smiles. He's like, Momo, what song is that? Like the emotion that Ray shows is so cute. He's like, come on, tell me the song. She's like, it's the cat song. He's like, I don't know what that is. And then, you know, and the fact of him holding her little hand, oh, and knowing that he's lost his sister, oh, it is soul crushing. It is soul crushing because he has the dog. I love that the dogs, all the animals in this world, all the domesticated animals have inner voices. Insanity. And I love that the dog chases her and he gets the hat and holds her back. And then, of course, she falls. And if you've ever been around a little kid, even if it is a little cut or a little scrape, that little kid is going to freak out because if they see blood or if they're scraped, it's just a response, right? But he like gathers her up in his arms and takes her back. Oh, that little shot. I want to get a picture of that, of him like holding her. Oh my God. That is so cute. Cannot. And then he gets her back to do the first aid kit. And here's what I respect about Ray so much is that Ray is so mature. In that moment, if a little kid is freaking out, you know, he treats her like an adult almost, right? And I think that's by design because the adults around him, like the Shogi playing rival character, treated him like an adult when he was a kid. And Ray is so good at diffusing the situation. Like he gets her distracted. He's like, do you know where the first aid kit is? Can you help me find it? And she's like, okay. And it distracts her from being sad about the pain. And then he's able to get the kit and he calms her down to like do the cuts and bruises and run the water over it to bandage it. It's so well done. I'm like, good on you. Good on you, Ray. That's awesome. And then that's when he has the moment where he sees her arm and remembers seeing his sister's corpse there in the morgue and him holding Momo's hand reminds him of his sister's hand. Oh my God. At that point, I was like, I had forgot about the sister, but then I remembered her and I was like, oh, we're going that route. And him just sitting there sobbing. That got me. That almost got me. I was like starting to tear up and I'm like, nope. It's like, don't you do it. Don't you do it. And oh God, it was so well done. So yeah. So then it seems like Momo doesn't think anything of it. And Hina doesn't seem to know about the sibling and the parents dying, but Akari knows. I feel like Akari's done her research. Either Akari's done her research or Ray has told her at some point that his family died. So I feel like she knows, whether the other two don't, right? He remembered something. Everything artistic, like I said, about this episode is amazingly done. But the funeral, the way it's described, my normal life suddenly ended as if it had been ripped away from me. Like everything about Ray, the storm inside of him, the way that the animation, it shows the wind whipping around him and everything. I'm just waiting for him and Kyoko to meet again. And it's like two storms gathering, right? And the way that they did the funeral where he's just sitting there in the funeral home by himself. And the way that they draw him, just sitting there alone and there's all these empty seats around him and no one will come near him. That part was so devastating. None of his family would come and comfort this little kid. For whatever reason, they wouldn't do it. And then we see Kiwako. So Kiwako is the aunt, right? Kiwako is the aunt. And she has a kid of her own, right? The woman would never agree to it. Which is interesting. The grandfather's too old, so we don't even know if the grandpa's still alive. The grandpa's mad because he had a hospital and he entrusted it to the son and the son died. So now the aunt's like, well, we'll take over the hospital business. We'll take it over and make the money. And I'm like, are you licensed to do that? He's like, what's going to happen to the hospital? You finally gave up on Shogi. So I thought everything would turn out well. And yeah, the one guy's like, you've got me, I'll take care of everything. And she's like, that's what I've been saying from the beginning. So yeah, these two come in and they're just like gold diggers. They just want to take over they don't even care, You only thought about our big brother. Oh, yeah, they don't even care about Ray. And I love that we see the rival coming up through the rain. And yeah, so the woman here that was Ray's aunt, she's sitting there and she's like pretending to cry, but she's clearly not sad about her own brother dying. And you would think this would be an outlandish thing, but no, I've seen this happen in real life where there are some awful people that do not care and are greedy like this. There are some greedy mofos out there in the world, and they exist, and she is one of them, and she is based off real people. And then, yeah, her kid doesn't know any different, like Ray's cousin. She's like, I'll find a good orphanage for Ray. Like, he looks like a Dursley. Like, he just looks like Dudley Dursley, that little boy there. So she has a son, and she says that she's going to find an orphanage for Ray. And you know, she didn't want to take in the cuckoo. Nope. Didn't want to at all. And Ray's sitting there, he's like, I didn't know what an orphanage was. Ray looks so miserable there, which his family's dead and none of his extended family is caring for him. I wanted to like scoop him up and run away from there with him. I don't blame the rival for taking him in. I don't, because it's like, oh. So Code, we see his name starts with Code, but we don't see the rest of it. He's like, until then, no matter how tough school was, I could return to my warm room and relax. He's like, no matter how much I was bullied, I could always come home and be safe here. But if I go there, even though I went back to my room, somebody would always be there. Somebody would be there when I went to sleep too. And he's like, I realized out of the 365 days in a year, I wouldn't have a single moment to feel relief. Oh, awful. And that's when the rival comes. And then he arrived. God, I love the way this whole scene is amazing. Because he just shows up there and it's in the darkness. Many of my blood relatives had come to the funeral, but none of them came up to me like him. Oh, he was the only one in the room. Yep, who acknowledged him. Who made me feel so nostalgic that I wanted to cry out. Yeah, he was the only one he connected with, right? And then the aunt saying, my husband will be taking over the Kiriyama hospital. There's nothing else to say. And I do like that the other relatives there are being like, can you believe this bitch? She is standing at her brother's grave talking about taking over the family business more than being sad that her brother has died in a horrific car accident and his wife and child is dead. She could care less. I'm like, she's the worst. The worst. The worst. I'm glad that Ray doesn't have to deal with her. She has green eyes like Ray, but I'm glad that Ray does not have to deal with this woman. She seems awful. And then you can see like all the family members, a lot of them have green eyes. They're like, I can't believe Kiwako's terrible attitude. And they're like, you're at a funeral. And I like that the rival looks around and sees just how petty some of these people are. Awful. And then he looks down at Ray. And he says, do you like Shogi? And I love that when he looks down at Ray, there's like all the crisscrossing lines coming off of him. Oh, incredible. Incredible. Yep. It says, do you like Shogi? And Ray is like, this is the moment of the agreement. An agreement. The god of Shogi and I were bound to each other by an ugly lie. And the way that this is written, the way he says as the Shogi pieces fall, I like that he says yes. And I love the way that like the lightning flashes, the art. Oh, it was a lie. And he said, the first time in my life that I lied in order to live. So he's like, yeah, I started this lie so that I wouldn't have to go to an orphanage, so I could have some semblance of comfort and love in this world. And you don't blame him. He's a child. And it's like the one thing that he's good at, he's naturally good at it, so he can't help but be good. And it's like this allows him to have a home. It's just like the dad, the rival, that is, we find his name starts, it's Code. We don't know the rest of it. But he's the one that kind of like sours the milk, right? Because he took Rei in, which I love that he took Rei in. He didn't let Rei go to an orphanage by himself. I love that he took him in when his family would not. I love that about him. And I love that he thought that Rei genuinely liked Shogi. So he wanted to foster it because it's, you know, people that have like-minded things. The thing that sucks is the double standard with his children. And we'll talk about that here in a second. The double standard he has with his children. And he's like, after that, I could never return. The ropes were cut and the curtain dropped. Yep. And that was it. And I became a child of a Shogi family. Oh my God, it's so freaking good. So then as he's repairing the cardigan that was given to him by the rival dad, by the Shogi father, we'll call him the Shogi father, that was given to him by him, he fixes that thread, right? Because that cardigan means so much to him. And he's like, it's crooked, it's not great, but it won't come undone again. I fixed it myself. I like that he fixed it himself. I like that Rei is self-sufficient and figures out how to fix it. I love that. That's really, really good. And then as he's working on it, then we see Kyoko, who she's the one that got on top of him, waiting for me in that house of Shogi. Yep, her smacking him were the true children who also aspired to be professional Shogi players. Because, yeah, we established that he is like a celebrity and everyone is vying for attention. They're all vying for attention. And we have the two children. We have Kyoko, who she's even named after him, right? They share a name. They share like the same kind of sounding alliterative names. And she's the elder one. Like looks like she's older than Rei. Yeah. And she's also aggressive. She's like, don't be full of yourself. She's so pretty and she has his eyes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she looks like a lion. Kyoko. Yeah, Kyoko, not Kyoko. The daughter, who's 4 years older than Rei. Okay, so if he's like in high school, she's like 19. So she's definitely, and Ayumu, the son, the third grader who's the same age as me. So Ayumu. And Ayumu seems super shy and timid. Ayumu seems like a lamb. A lion and a lamb, right? He seems like a lamb. And she is a lion. She is fierce. Which I feel like she's like her father. She's fierce like her dad. She's Cersei Lannister. She literally it is. It's like Cersei Lannister. She's Cersei Lannister. And she is like, I'm going to be the Shogi player that my father will respect. And the son doesn't seem to care. The son's just doing it, but he doesn't seem as tied to Shogi. He's just like, eh. He seems more shy about it all. Like he could care less, but she cares. She is fierce. And I like how Rei views her as just like this tempest, right? And she's standing outside and the mom is like, she's the mom. And I love that he like stares back at her angry. Like the son looks like the mom, right? And the mom's like, oh, don't you think she's being hard? She's a girl. You know, she's had enough. Forgive her. And he's like, no, she struck a player. She has to stand outside and pay for it. And the mom's like, but she's a girl. And the dad's like, I don't believe in sexism. He's like, no, this isn't about Shogi. How dare she strike an opponent after losing? Yeah. Which, on the one hand, yeah, he is hard on her for her attitude because she's just vicious. And they're like, but he's like, the father was strict with Kyoko, which she has an attitude, so. But the thing is, he was harder on her because of her strength. So because she was strong, he was hard on her. And the thing is, I don't know if she realizes that sign that he's hard on her and is strict with her is a sign that he cares about her growth and wants her to develop as a player. And maybe we don't know the full story with Kyoko and with the Shogi dad, but to me it seems like maybe she reminds him of himself and he sees Rei as the rival and he's like trying to cultivate his daughter to become better than Rei. But at the same time, he also is fostering Rei as well. And so Rei feels like he's the cuckoo. He's like, I feel like I'm throwing them out of the nest and taking their place because I'm good and she's not as good as Rei. And there is a point where I'm like, the Shogi dad, you know, it is his fault because he's being so hard on her and he's giving more attention and devotion to Rei than her. But that's not Rei's fault. That's the Shogi dad's fault that he's like that. And my mom, I know exactly what Kyoko is going through because my mom, she coached basketball. She was really good at basketball and she coached it for years. And I would watch her all the time. I'm terrible at basketball. And my mom was kind of like, you know what? You don't have to play. It's fine. She realized how much I sucked. But my aunt, who is 8 years older than me and 16 years younger than her, my aunt was more like a sister to me than an aunt. She played basketball and would complain all the time because my mom was really hard on her. And my mom was really hard on her as a coach because she was blood, because she was like, you can do good. I know you can do good. And my aunt complained about it all the time. So I feel like my aunt would connect with Kyoko a lot in this case scenario. I feel like that would be the case, right? But oh my God, she was as tempestuous as a storm in every respect. Her shogi style, her disposition, and her beauty too. I don't know. There's a part of me that would love for Rei to reconnect with her and maybe her change. Kind of like the two dads were rivals, like him and her be rivals. And it, you know, the romantic in me is like, I would love that to lead to something else. But also she maybe violated him and I want her to stay far away from him. So I'm very torn about her relationship with him, but he clearly recognizes her beauty, right? And her disposition like a storm. Yeah. She's like, what are you staring at, twerp? Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, that's when she jumps in, I feel. And yeah, she just punches him. Never mind. I don't want her to be next to him. I don't want her to be next to him. He can do better. He doesn't need someone that's so violent as her. It's like she's just shedding her insecurities on him. And they're like, knock it off, Kyoko. Yep. And then, yeah, the cardigan the dad's wearing is the one he gives Rei. Oh, and that like sends her into orbit. Because she's like, why do you call him son? And he's like, well, I don't want him calling me master. That's weird. And they both feel like they're being neglected because of Rei. And he's like, of course, the dad is like just celebrating Rei's victories. And then they're like, the dad loved Shogi. Everything was centered around Shogi for him. Mm-hmm. And as Ayumu and Rei are playing, the sister is watching. Therefore, those who loved him had no choice but to get stronger. It's like, that's the part that sucks, is that the dad, it's like to earn love from him, you have to love Shogi. Which Rei's father was not like that. Rei's father was like, I'll love you no matter what, it seems. You don't have to play Shogi. You can go outside. But for this man, to love him is to love Shogi. And what sucks is that these characters want to love him, and so they keep playing Shogi to try to appease him. And I love that the sister is just, she's so watching everything. I had a question about losing an entrance in order to stay in his field of vision. Yep. And then the sun breaks first. Yeah, the sun can't take it. Ayumu was the first one to have a breakdown, and he doesn't want to play anymore. Right? The apprentice we've taken in surpassed him at Shogi. And he said he was quitting and just played video games with the dog. And at first, the dad, like, I didn't mind what the dad said here when Ayumu, on the surface, when it happened, when the dad was like, oh, well, if he won't continue unless someone persuades him, it's pointless. We shouldn't force him to play Shogi if he doesn't want to. And at first I was like, oh, well, that's nice. He's not like the soccer dad that keeps forcing the child to play when they don't want to anymore. At first I was like, oh, that's not a big deal. That's fine. But then the downside of that is because the son gives up, the dad gives up on the son. That's the part that sucks, because it's like, yeah, on the one hand, good, you're not making your kid play something they don't want to play. Great. But on the other hand, he decides that, oh, well, my one son doesn't want to play Shogi anymore. That's all right. I've still got you, Rei. It's totally okay. And just neglects his kid. And it's like, oh my God, that part's not good. And Rei's like, I'm just here playing Shogi. And so he's like, but if he isn't someone who can convince himself and make progress on his own, it's pointless. And it's like, and I love the way that it's like in the shadows and then everything is like blurred and red. Becoming a professional. And he tells Rei, becoming a professional isn't the goal. The path after becoming that will make your head spin. The further you go, the steeper it becomes, and there won't be anyone around you. And only someone who can maintain himself will continue to make progress. So, and again, in that regard, I love how layered the Shogi father is, because there's parts of the things that he says that I'm like, oh no, that makes lots of sense. That's a good advice to give. And then there's parts of him that you're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to your kids? And what he's telling Ray is good. He's like, it's not becoming a professional that should be the end goal. You have to be able to sustain yourself, because being a shogi player, like Ray is giving up school. Ray is ditching school to be a professional shogi player. And it's like, what if that fails? What do you have to fall back on? Not much. So it's like, he's like, if you can't maintain yourself and make progress and continue down this winding, isolating road, then you're doomed. And it's like, I don't think I want to be a professional shogi player. I think I'd rather do something else. It's a little bit safer of a career choice. But yeah, he's like, that's just the way that it has to be. And then I do like the way they show shogi games. Like, the one thing that's so great about this as a sports anime is there is no glorifying the sport and making it like, I've watched some sports anime, like, for example, Free, Blue Lock, maybe, Kuroko's Basketball, where sometimes, in Kuroko's Basketball, there's like meteors going down, flying through the air, and you're like, is this basketball? And, it's very artistic and aesthetically pleasing, but you're like, is this really realistic to the sport? And here they show what an actual shogi match looks like, and you're like, oh no, that's authentic. That all makes sense, actually. And I didn't realize that you run out of time. Because the one game, like, keeps going and going and going. And here, I guess these timed matches, I am curious, because these matches seem timed, where you only have so much time before the game is over. But then the one match before, like when Nikaido and him went through the evening, so I'm curious how that went. I don't know. I don't know if I want to know for sure or not. I kind of would. Okay, so one question for the comments that I am fine with getting an answer for is, how does the timing system work? I feel like they might tell us in the series, because we're only on episode 5, but I am curious how the timing system works. Like, how can some games go on really long and others do not, seemingly? I don't know if that's a thing. Maybe it's just like the practice game. But yeah, I like that Kyoko, she's so impetuous, but she's also very impatient. She doesn't have the calm mind and focus that Ray and the others do, and she runs out of time very quickly. And you can see how restless that she is, right? Especially against Ray, who ends up beating her. Yeah. And then she asks, why do I have to quit the Federation? And here's the thing. And the dad holds up Ray and says, if you can't beat Ray, there's no point in going on. This part, I was like, wait a minute. What is this double standard? I was like, your son quits, and you're like, it's okay, I'll just take Ray. He's fine, I don't need you. You don't have any passion for it. But Kyoko clearly has passion. She has so much passion. And she's doing this because she seems to like it and wants to like it and be good at it enough to impress her father. And for her father to be like, well, if you can't beat Ray, then there's no point in you doing this. That is some manipulative, twisted shit. And I like the Shogi dad, but then I'm like, he does stuff like this, and I'm like, oh, that's so messed up. And he's just like grabbing Ray by the arm there. He's like, if you make it to first dawn, there'll be stronger players everywhere. Like, here's your standard. And oh, her face. He's like, you understand, don't you, Kyoko? And she is just so pissed. Oh, it is terrifying to see how, like, frightfully mad she is. Oh, terrifying. Yeah. Yep. What a great time. And then they show him, like, making first dawn and everything. And they're like, wow, someone else's kid made the cut. How ironic it was his rival. But then after that, Kyoko spent a lot of time gallivanting around town. Going out, whoring it up. I don't know. And then Ayumu shut himself in his room with his video games. And we no longer spent time together. And I kept playing Shogi. So then by the time he's in middle school, he's one step away from being a professional and decides not to finish high school. And that's when he learns about the cuckoo and realizes that that's what he is. It took over the nest and kicked the other eggs out. And the bird continues to feed the chick that murders its offspring. And that shot of Ray where he's just like, it all comes into realization that he's like, oh my God, that's me. I did that. And I'm like, but it's the dad's fault more than anything. And that's when Ray decides he has to be independent. He's like, I have to get out of here so that this family will stop being devoured by me and my father as well. Oh my God. And Ray like fixing the cardigan and smiling, being like, I did it. I fixed it. I could still wear it. And it's so crazy because we see him like, I love that shot of him like in the black and white, and then you cut to him as a kid with the cardigan, and it shows him like as the nest with the eggs that are broken. And he's like, thank you, Dad. If I truly were a bird, then at least I could have never known about this relentless pain. It's like, it is so layered, right? There's so much layering to this because it's like Ray, he feels for his father, his Shogi dad. He's like, he's grateful for him because he gave him a place to go and he spared him from like being abandoned in an orphanage. So he loves his father and he loves what he's done for him. And he loves that he's given him, you know, this means, but he's also like, you've also put me in this cycle and I've got to like do this so that you don't, you know, drown your own family. And so, oh my God. And nobody really knows about all this except maybe Akari. Oh. At first, in the first episode, I was like, why do the kids of that man bully him so much? And now their resentment towards Ray makes a lot of sense. And Ray, the problem is Ray is not a communicative person. So Ray can't really stick up for himself and communicate and defend himself and tell Kyoko and Ayumu this. He can't do that. So it just makes it worse. So, oh. This is such a good episode. Oh my God, I can't wait to talk to you all about it in the comments. I'm floored. I am floored. I am going to be gone. I'm going to go ahead and probably record episode 6 because I'm going to be gone and I need to go ahead and record episode 6 for scheduling. But I am so excited to hear your comments for this episode and next week because then when we come back for episode 7, I will have lots to talk about with you all. So, oh my God. So I'll probably go ahead and watch episode 6 later this week, but I haven't looked at all the comments yet from episodes 2 and 3 yet. I haven't seen all of those comments yet, so I'm going to look over those and maybe for episode 6 have a few more things to talk about, but incredible. One of the best like backstory episodes I've seen of any anime that I've watched. And that's saying something. So everything just clicked. It clicks and it makes sense and it's deep and it's emotional and we're only 5 episodes into this 44 episode anime. I can see why y'all love it now. I'm on board. I'm hooked. I'm hook, line, and sinker. So yes, I cannot believe this episode, but I cannot wait to talk to y'all about it in the comments down below. I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back again real soon with more March Comes In Like a Lion. Bye.